there's a practicing Christian, you know we're going to do the right thing at the local level.
That's right.
I want to talk to you a little bit tonight, if you will allow me, about Amendment 2. Now, I want to give this disclaimer, which I always give when I speak on a topic where you're going to cast your vote. My job is not to tell you how to vote.
And tonight, I don't want to do that either.
How you vote is your decision. But I hope you'll share the information that we give you and that we talk about tonight with your friends and your neighbors and your relatives, so that everyone shows up at the polls and votes their conscience, regardless of where they vote for or against Amendment 2. But let me start out by telling you that this is a multifaceted approach. When you go and pick up your local paper or you watch some of the information on television, you'll see that this is about medical marijuana. Now, they call it medical marijuana to give it legitimacy. What this is about is legalizing marijuana in the state of Florida. Make no mistake about it. And there's a difference in those who believe there are components of medicine in marijuana and Amendment 2. So let me ask a question, and this is not intended to embarrass anybody, but how many of you prior to this evening have read Amendment 2? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You look down. In the morning, if you have to raise it, I hope he's ready. Mike Bruce, my dear friend as well, is one of the guys that keeps me out of trouble every day. This is not unusual. We're fortunate that we had 6 or 7 or 8 people that have read the constitutional amendment. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. In fact, there was a 2010 RAND study that said the younger an individual is when they first use pot, the more likely to move on to cocaine and heroin. But I'm not going to get into that tonight. I'm not going to tell you that the dope of today, the marijuana of today, is a lot more potent than it was in the Woodstock era back in the 60s. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a cop. I'm not going to tell you anything other than the National and Florida Medical Association says it's a bad idea. The American Academy of Ophthalmology says it's a bad idea. The American Cancer Institute says it's a bad idea. They said there is no medical value in smoke marijuana. And that's what we're talking about with Amendment 2. Now think about it. They want to call it medicine. But when's the last time you went to your doctor because you weren't feeling well, and he said, here, take this, go home and smoke it until you feel better? Has that ever occurred? When's the last time you went to your doctor and he gave you a prescription and told you to go fill it so you feel better, and you couldn't fill it at a pharmacy? You had to go to a top shop to fill it. Has that ever occurred? Well, they'll lead you to believe, and when they see these high polling, they'll say, if your doctor gives you a prescription for medical marijuana for the very sick and the very diseased who are suffering, won't you support that? And a lot of the people in the state of Florida say, yeah, why not? If nothing else works, why not? But ladies and gentlemen, that's not Amendment 2. First off, doctors can't give prescriptions because it's not a legal medicine and won't be a legal medicine even if they pass this amendment. Doctors should give recommendations. Number 2, legitimate physicians, doctors, aren't going to give recommendations. What you're going to see is what we call hot docs. Remember, they used to be pill mill docs? That's who you'll be dealing with. Third, think about this for a minute. When's the last time that you pulled parking lot of your doctor's office and saw a guy there holding a sign that said, hey, physicals for only $40. Have you ever seen that? That's happened in California, and they call it medicine. What Amendment 2 is, and what this whole movement is about by the pro-marijuana people, is simply a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's designed specifically to tug on our heartstrings. It's designed specifically for us who are compassionate people to say, well, heck, if traditional medicine doesn't help, and they're very sick with cancer or AIDS or HIV or ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, why not? But ladies and gentlemen, they're leading this pro-marijuana movement with a few very sick people with anecdotal evidence that it helped them. But the reality of it is, that's not what Amendment 2 is. So while they're tugging on your heartstrings, while they're pushing you as a compassionate person to vote for it just to help the very sick, understand that is not their primary mission. Let's talk about this. The average medical marijuana card holder in California for medical marijuana is a 32-year-old male. Don't you know that's a very sick population? In Colorado, before they legalized recreational use of marijuana, 94% of the people who had a permit to have medical marijuana, 94% did not have HIV, AIDS, cancer, ALS, or glaucoma. Do you know what they had? Other conditions. Other conditions. Now, as you go home and read Amendment 2, we've highlighted some of the loopholes. Because unless you're a lawyer or a wordsmith, you can read through Amendment 2 and says, well, it looks like it's just for the very sick. Until you see the word or other conditions. Then you find out that 94% of the people in Colorado aren't very sick that have this. So what's another condition? Another condition is stress, anxiety, my legs hurt, I can't sleep at night. And I'm really worried about that stress. Because if that's legitimate, then everybody that ever worked in public safety ought to have a medical marijuana card. That concerns me. In Colorado, the rate of use among teens is 39% above the national average. In fact, we've got a slide here, and it's going to show you the highest states. It's hard to read, but you can see the color difference. The red states at the very top has the highest usage of marijuana age 12 to 17. The red states at the top. Guess what else the red states at the top have in common? Marijuana is legal in those states. So if you have medical marijuana legal in your state, your kids are going to be more likely to use marijuana. The red at the top is the highest use by kids. The red at the top is the ones who what? Have legalized marijuana. So there's this perception that the pro-marijuana people are trying to portray that says everybody wants medical marijuana. Ladies and gentlemen, there was another poll that was created that said, do you know, if we talked about some of the loopholes, I wonder if they would still be for medical marijuana. try to do is we try to set medical marijuana here and Amendment 2 here and point out Amendment 2's loopholes. For example, did you know, according to Amendment 2, children can have access to medical marijuana? When you look through your amendment, you'll see a word that says a person. Now, who's a person? Everybody's a person. They didn't say people over the age of 18 can have access to medical marijuana. They already didn't say people who have only a severe disease can have medical marijuana. So far, Amendment 2 has told us what? Okay, Amendment 2 has told us a person can have it, which includes kids. And it's also said people with debilitating diseases can have it, and other conditions. When those questions were asked of the same people that supposedly were in favor of medical marijuana, they voted it down in the polls. I've had several senior citizens come up to me after these speeches and say, Sheriff, I was for this medical marijuana for the very sick. Because I thought, heck, if nothing else worked, why not? And then I sit here tonight and heard about Amendment 2, and that's not what I meant at all. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly the position of most of the folks in the state of Florida that see Amendment 2. They see that they're being duped. They see that it's a scam. They see that it's for more than just those that are very sick. So this poll also asks another question about caregivers. In the constitutional amendment, there is a note that says the only requirement to be a caregiver is you have to be 21 years of age and have no more than 5 patients at a time. When you and I think of a caregiver, we think of a doctor, we think of a nurse, we think of someone that comes to your house to help you with rehab after surgery or injury. We think of that as a caregiver. But under the constitutional amendment, caregivers only have to be 21 years of age and have no more than 5 patients. Well, a caregiver can go get your marijuana for you. So who can a caregiver be? It can be a felon. It can be your next door neighbor. It can be anyone. Do you know what we call these caregivers according to Amendment 2? Dope dealers. Dope dealers. Now, think about that for a minute. Now, as you ponder that, guess what Amendment 2 says that should shock the business community? That should shock you as one of those who buys not only homeowners insurance, but certainly vehicle insurance. This constitutional amendment says that the grower of the marijuana, the caregiver that distributes the marijuana, the physician that authorizes the marijuana with a recommendation cannot be held criminally or civilly liable. Think about that. So, they want to call it medical marijuana, but if you go to a physician and he misdiagnoses you and creates some injury to you, he can be held liable in civil court. If you go to a pharmacy and they give you the wrong medicine or the wrong dosage and it injures you, they can be held civilly liable. Not so with medical marijuana. You cannot sue them. So let me give you an example. You go in to see your physician, your pot doc, and you say, Doc, I'm not sleeping well at night, and my legs hurt, my back hurts, and I have stress. And he says, well, let me give you this recommendation for medical marijuana. Well, being someone of some stature in the community, you go to your caregiver and say, would you go don't do that. So the caregiver goes to the grower of the marijuana. They bring the marijuana to you and you smoke it. 3 months from now, 4 months from now, 6 months from now, you notice this growth on your shoulder. And you go back to your doctor and say, hey, this growth has popped up on my shoulder since I started this medical marijuana. And he looks at that and says, ooh, that's real bad. We need to biopsy it. And he does. And he calls you back in and says, you know what? You got some kind of rare form of cancer we haven't seen in years. And you say, but doc, I never had any of this problem until I got that recommendation from you. He said, yeah, I know, but you can't sue me anyway. So you run to your caregiver and you say, look at this. And the caregiver says, wow, man, I didn't see anything like that. And you go, well, what did you give me? Wow, man, I've got you some of the best medical marijuana. Well, look, I've got a rare cancer now. Wow, that's too bad, but you know, you can't sue me. I'm not liable. Well, where'd you get it from? Well, I got it over here from this guy who grows it. You say, hey, man, you see that? The guy says, wow, man, that's bad. You're the fifth one to come in here this week with that. With cancer. Yeah, that's what the others said. Well, how did that happen? He said, man, I don't know. I've grown marijuana for years in Colorado, California. I came here, set up shop, and he says, I grow some great marijuana, but, you know, it's these pesky bugs in Florida, and I spray this stuff on to kill those bugs, just like that. Well, what is it? Paraquat is what they call it, I think. But hey, after all, I'm not civilly responsible. See you later. That's Amendment 2. If you vote for Amendment 2, they're all out of the box. But guess what? If you own a small business or a large business, when someone shows up on your property stoned with their medical marijuana card and has a workman's comp claim, you can be sued. You can be held liable. When you're driving down the road and someone stoned pulls in front of you and you hit them, in a vehicle crash, you go, hey, I'm not at fault, you know. Well, you know, these new cars have computers in them. You were doing 8 miles over the speed limit, so you share some of the civil liability. And your insurance company's going to pay. Because that stone dude pulled in front of you and you were driving 8 miles over the speed limit when you hit him. Your insurance is going to pay. So your insurance is going to pay. Your business, the people you shop with, is going to pay. So guess who's really going to pay? You are the consumer. For people to have the right to have a medical marijuana permit. You know, I often think, by the way, when they asked that poll question, it crashed again. It didn't pass in the poll. It didn't pass. And then I think about how many of these pot shops are there going to be? Keep in mind, there's 31 McDonald's in Polk County that serves our needs. I don't know about you, but I love McDonald's. I'm going to eat these McDonald's French fries, and you can tell. And there's 13 Taco Bells, 14 if you have to count the one that's under construction. And I really love that big burrito. But you know what? If Amendment 2 passes, the Department of Health says that we're going to have 57 medical marijuana dispensaries. 57. Now, if you don't want that landfill in your backyard, and if you don't want that jail in your backyard, which one of those medical dispensaries and the clientele that comes with it do you want in your backyard? 57. Now think about it. All the McDonald's Polk County needs can be serviced by 31 I think kind of lays out everything I've been talking about. It was done out of Channel 9 in Orlando, where the reporter, the photographer, went to Los Angeles and down to Venice Beach.
Florida voters may decide whether or not to legalize medical marijuana.
Now, investigators found that in California, the abuse of the law there is rampant. Amendment 2. They call it medical marijuana. And their story is simple. They say they just want to help the sick. But that's not the whole story. We watched as over and over people came out carrying a white envelope with their prescription. Well, what was your medical reason? I don't know, I guess it with that. These teenagers also bragged to me about how easy it was. With that information, I went into a different office down the boardwalk. They asked for my driver's license. I then filled out a form, provided some personal information, and during my doctor consultation, was instructed to say I had trouble sleeping. There you go. The physician statement and approval for medical marijuana.
California has seen its experiment with medical marijuana quickly mutate into de facto legalization. And while Amendment 2 backers have been long California comparisons, many legal observers and law enforcement officers are quick to note that Florida's Amendment 2 is in fact far more lenient than California's medical marijuana laws and fraught with numerous significant legal loopholes. On Amendment 2, the devil is in the details.
The devil is in the details. Did you notice the doctor's offices? Did you notice the dispensaries? Ladies and gentlemen, yes, Amendment 2 talks about debilitating diseases, it talks about other conditions. Here's what the ballot language says, in part. Now keep in mind, when you walk into the booth, or you get your absentee ballot, and you read the ballot language, only the ballot language, there's nothing about these loopholes designated in that paragraph. Nothing. But let me read in part. It says, allows the medical use of marijuana for individuals with debilitating diseases as determined by a Florida physician. That's what it says. Here's what we believe it should say. Allows for the use of marijuana for any medical condition for which a physician issues a recommendation. Allows for the development of marijuana-infused foods, including candy and snacks that appeal to children. Does not recognize the private property rights of landlords and other multi-dwelling units. Waives a patient's right to medical malpractice claim. Waives the right. Ladies and gentlemen, think about this for just a minute. They make medical marijuana infused in things that look like gummy bears. Does that sound like a medicine for an adult or an enticement for children? They started with medical marijuana in Washington State and Colorado, and now they have recreational use. And they're trying to have recreational use of marijuana in California. Let me share this with you. For those who watch the news or pay attention, you know Jerry Brown is the governor of California. He is probably, without much argument, the most liberal governor in the United States. And he's up for re-election this year. And they're trying to push recreational use marijuana. When Jerry Brown says, I don't think it's a good idea, we probably ought to listen. Because it may be the first thing that we've ever agreed with him on. He's seen the experiment with medical marijuana, the social experiment in California.
and he doesn't want any more of it. Ladies and gentlemen, even when we ask the question, you know, marijuana is federally illegal even if the Amendment 2 passes. When we related that to the folks in that poll, it failed once again. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to relate to you, that medical marijuana is what they're selling. What you're getting is Amendment 2 that has to do with a few people making billions of dollars. In Lake Wells alone, a businessman from Atlanta has already purchased property getting ready for this in the event it passes. They're prepping themselves for that. Do you know that according to the data, there's a 200% increase in marijuana exposure to children under 5 years of age since they legalized medical marijuana and recreational marijuana in Colorado? Half of that exposure was through edibles. One young man, and if you've read the news, ate a marijuana cookie. He came from Wyoming to Colorado on spring break last year. He ate a medical marijuana cookie and jumped to his death. And they said, well, it's not our fault. He was only supposed to eat a quarter of the cookie. When's the last time you ate a quarter of a cookie? The young man ate a little bit, he didn't see any reaction. He ate a little bit, he didn't see any reaction. And by the time he ate the whole cookie, he saw a significant overdose that caused him his life. So at the end of the day, Miami Herald did a poll about 7 weeks ago about Amendment 2. Miami, or Dade County, is majority Democrat register, and statistically, Democrats have a larger proclivity to vote for this than Republicans. I'm not talking politics, I'm just talking to death. Miami Herald did a poll. In Dade County, Amendment 2 failed in the poll. They get it in Dade County, at least as of several weeks ago. And I guess it's time to quit with this junk. I've never had one like this before, that when your time's up, it just What this is about is de facto legalization of marijuana in the state of Florida. So they told me to take a few questions, and I'll be more than happy to do that, but let me give you my ending disclaimer. My ending disclaimer is this: I work for you. You're my boss. If you vote for Amendment 2, I'm going to say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, I'm going to salute and march on, because you and my bosses have given me my marching orders. How you vote is up to you. I only provide you this information so that when you go to the polls, you can make an informed decision, because you can't tell from the ballot language, the synopsis, what it really is. And the other reason I provide this for you is a year or two down the road, if it passes, I don't want you to come up to me and say, Sheriff, we elected you, we put you in that position to educate us, to inform us, to tell us. We're busy in our own world, so we can't keep up with everything. And you sit there on your hands with your mouth shut. I'm just providing you the information. I can tell you personally, for me, I'm voting against Amendment 2. And at the same time, the legislature passed Charlotte's Web for the very sick and the children. The Florida Sheriff's Association supported that. And I was the president of the association. Why? It's not smoked. It's in a pill form. It requires research. It was passed on anecdotal evidence, which is against the recommendation of the medical folks. But at the end of the day, that's all it's for. It was a tightly written law. And the most important thing, the reason the board here supported it, the THC, the intoxicant, was brought down to almost nothing. It was such a small amount that you could not become intoxicated. And it's not in a smoked form, and it will be in a measurable dosage, and it will have the attributes that medicine does. And the last difference I want to point out is, when's the last time, by public referendum, we overrode the FDA and just decided something ought to be in medicine? Thank you very much, and we will answer questions for a couple of minutes. Now, if it's an easy question, I'm going to answer it. If it's a hard question, my crew is going to. If it's a really hard question, Elisa, who's in the back, is going to answer it because she's the expert to put all this together. And we have a mic so everyone can hear. Okay?
I got one. Could you explain to everyone how much worse it is when you're smoking marijuana compared to alcohol when you're driving, and about the family that just all died that was driving and you told us about before? Could you explain that to everyone?
You know, the example that we hear over and over, marijuana has never killed anyone. That's fiction. There was a man on 27 who turned left in front of a northbound vehicle. The northbound vehicle, the folks who were there wearing their seatbelt, driving the speed limit, doing everything right, but they keep up the vehicle. The driver, who had a high THC content, survived. The passenger in the front seat died. The passenger in both the left rear and the right rear seats died. And one of them was pregnant, and that one died. Folks, everybody in the car died except the guy that was stoned. Everyone. And at the end of the day, we hear marijuana's never hurt anyone. Well, I can tell you, our state attorney prosecutes people every day that, but for their stoned and euphoric positions, probably never would have used that gun or that knife on somebody. And we can tell horror stories all day long about the social side. And for me, that's it. You know, I don't doubt for a minute that there aren't people that use marijuana on the weekend recreationally, get up and go to work, stay at home, and they think everything's cool. But I can tell you that we see the death, the destruction, and the houses and the homes that are wrecked because of drug abuse. And we know statistically that marijuana is the gateway drug, regardless of what they say. And the drug dealers will say, well, how about alcohol? Well, let me ask you, do you want to get run over by a Chevrolet or a Ford? Okay? I hear the silliest arguments. And then I push back and I say, wait a minute, I'm not talking about alcohol. I'm not talking about marijuana use. I'm talking about the scam you're trying to perpetuate on the people of Florida with Amendment 2. And that's what it's about. So when I speak in a non-church environment, when I speak in the community, I say, look, if you want to use marijuana, that's your business. I'm not arguing you over marijuana, that's your decision. But what I'm telling you is this is a fraud and a scam, and it's going to hurt children, and it's going to hurt our society, and it's going to hurt the social, and it's going to hurt the business people. And the people creating this can't even be held civilly liable.
What impact do you see as far as employers? What impact do you see as far as employers and pre-employment drug screens and sensitive jobs with DOT and random selections and stuff like that?
I can tell you, I refer to this Amendment 2 as the Lawyer Reemployment Act. Because those issues will be debated in courts for years to come. Because there's going to be an employer saying, look, I'm going to give you a drug And if you have THC in your system, I'm not hiring you. And then there's going to be pushback because somebody who's driving a truck for you or operating heavy equipment for you is going to come in and say, I got my medical marijuana permit. You can't, I can use this medical marijuana. And that's all going to court. And there's at least one case that I'm told, I haven't personally found it, but it's supposedly happening in Oregon, where a guy's locked up in the county jail and is suing the sheriff because he's got a medical marijuana permit, and the sheriff won't allow him to have his medical marijuana for his illness while he's in jail. Now, do you think for a minute that I'm going to buy medical marijuana? But guess what? If it passes, somebody's going to sue. And guess whose tax money is going to pay for that? Yours. Every time we're challenged in court. So I tell everyone, the cost to the taxpayers is going to go up. And then they're going to say, oh, wait a minute, but we're going to tax marijuana. And I go, wait a minute. We don't tax medicine in the state of Florida, do we? And aren't you saying this is medicine? How's that going to square? So that's another argument we'll have in court. And we won't know until the lawyers from both sides and the courts settle this years from now, but we'll be spending a whole lot of money to get a definitive answer.
What about the criminal element? Now, you say this will be taxed.
No, they say it'll be taxed.
No, they can't raise taxes through the sale of it.
I don't know. It's
In
not in there now.
In Colorado, they do.
It's recreational use. And in Colorado, they also tax
in the medical
medicine,
heavier
or at least they
tax
tax
than
that
the legal.
medicine. In Florida, we don't tax medicine. So that's the issues that are up in the air. Are we going to start taxing
crime rate.
medicine?
Crime rate. Is it up or down?
I was going to say it's
But the business is going to pot because now nobody wants to pay the taxes, so we have an underground element that's selling. So the criminal element is all over now.
No, yes. And one of the pro-marijuana people is cops want this law not passed because they like to arrest people for possession of marijuana. And they make money. I would love not to arrest people for possession of marijuana. And they say this will take all that away. No, it won't. You're exactly right. The underground market, the black market is going to undercut if we have tax on it. So even if we have tax on it, it's going to undercut the tax. There is an issue right now, I think it's in Washington State, where it's 31% tax if it's recreational, and it's like 3% tax if it's medical. And the dopers are saying, hey, I'll just get my medical marijuana card. I'm not paying that 31% tax. And the black market dope dealers are going 31%. All marijuana looks the same once I can duplicate how they sell it by the government and get it out into the community, and they're going to make money. And I tell everyone, here's my prediction. I don't have science for this yet. If this amendment passes, we will make more marijuana regulatory arrests than we currently make marijuana arrests. And you go, well, how's that? Well, here's the classic example. You're out here on 27 doing what everybody else does, and that's disobeying some traffic. You can spend your life measurably if you'll stay off of Highway 27. So a nice deputy stops you, and he walks up to the door with a big smile on his or her face and says, how are you today, ma'am? May I see your driver's license? We stopped you for doing 15 miles an hour over the speed limit. and she hands you the driver's license, and he looks in and says, "What is that on the seat beside you?" And she says, "Oh, that's my husband's medical marijuana." I don't see your husband in there. Do you have a medical marijuana card? Well, no. Bingo, you're in possession of marijuana without a permit. Now, before, he was smoking marijuana anyway, but he did it at home. So there will be more regulatory arrests. There is this illusion that, well, if it's legal, it's legal. You can't open a can of beer and walk down in the public with it. That's against the law. You can't have open containers. You can't have open containers in your car. So we don't make many illegal possession of alcohol arrests anymore, but we make dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and more dozens for alcohol regulatory issues. So the bottom line is, for those who are living under the illusion that once we get it legal, nobody will be arrested, it's just fiction.
Noticing the administration's lack of desire to enforce selected laws at the federal level, that administration will one day probably change. And when it does change and they decide to enforce the drug laws of the United States again, what will happen in Florida should that have been passed?
If the federal government was enforcing the marijuana laws as written in federal law today, we wouldn't be having this discussion tonight. Because marijuana is still illegal in the United States. Now, they won't meddle in that, but they're going to conduct their own investigation of a local event, terrible local event, that occurred over this last week. They're going to get involved in that. But they're not going to get involved in this social experiment, as they call it. If they enforce the federal law, we wouldn't be having this discussion tonight because you could not have marijuana.
Are you personally taking your message to the younger voters?
We are talking to those who will allow us to. Interestingly enough, I've been in one forum, I'm going to another forum, and the place is loaded up with youngsters, college age. Is that a sick population? I've not had one of them scream out yet, "This is for my granddaddy." I'm fighting for my granddaddy. They see it as the opportunity to take the social stigma away by legalizing de facto legalization. So we're talking to whoever will wants the education. But the thing that hurts me is taking advantage of us because we're compassionate and we want to help save people. And that's just what we call the league to get in the door. Yes, ma'am.
Are you also sending message to all the counties in Florida, or is it just like Dade County and Polk County? Are the representatives like you elsewhere?
Yes, ma'am. All over the state of Florida, the vast majority of the sheriffs have all signed on and are having similar meetings to this. We at the Florida Sheriff's Association by law, because we are a 501c3, only can provide education. Sheriffs individually can stay in position, but the foundation or the 501c3 cannot. But there's still another group that is a vote no on too, that's totally separate from us. So yes, there's a lot of efforts going on all over the state right now. And if you have opportunities through other civic clubs to hear this educational message, please let us know and we'll arrange for somebody to come there.
There was an article in the Ledger saying that the Amendment 2 received 60% of the vote. The use of marijuana will become legal for residents with disability, diseases, and determined by a licensed Florida physician. And it's also talking about Ivan Rosenfield, who has received legal marijuana from the government since 1982. And there's going to be another form, I assume you'll be interested in, August the 28th, I guess.
I'll be right there. Right in the middle of it, me and my favorite buddy, John Morgan. I don't know how much he's looking forward to it, but I can hardly wait. I bet he is too.
Are there not developed and tested legal drugs that will kill pain as well as or better than medical marijuana?
Yes, there are. Yes, there is. And in addition to that, there is a chemical compound called marinol that has all the attributes of smoked marijuana that's on the market for doctors to use and has been there for years. And there's another one, Sesimex or something. Slavax? Slavax is the latest one. I think there's Sesimex, Slavax, and the marinol. At least 3 that are on the market now that actually do the same thing in a chemical form as marijuana that the FDA has approved.
Then we're voting on the false premise.
Yes.
Sure, I want to be absolutely understanding on. You're saying a teenager could go to one of these hot dogs, get a recommendation, it is carried over to buy its stuff, and parents basically have no legal recourse at all.
This is complicated. Parents have to give approval for a child to see a doctor to be treated, right?
Yes.
If you follow the law. There is, so you can get it legally if a pediatrician gave a recommendation or if a pot doc gave a recommendation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, people like us are not going to take our kids to a doctor to get pot. But there are parents that will take their kids there to get pot for their diseases. Maybe not for the kid in reality, for them to use at home or to resell. But in addition to that, if the teenager goes in there just like they did in California to the pot doc, and the doc gives them that, those records are confidential. So someone's got to give them up, and there's got to be a criminal investigation, and so it's possible to get it as a kid, it's possible to get it illegal as a kid, and it's possible to hold them liable if you hear about it. Yes, sir.
One of my students wanted to know if this was legalized, would we be seeing students who were receiving medical marijuana being able to smoke that in the school systems because it's a medicine?
That is to be determined. The schools can certainly block it.
Rocky Mountain HIDA, which is high-intensity drug trafficking, they just redid in Colorado, thank you. They just did a report that they put out. And in that report, they also notated that the expulsions had extremely increased in Colorado just for pot possession. And that the majority of what they are getting is either been issued to that child or been issued to that child's parent.
Our school system will obviously create a rule that you can't have in school, but that'll be another legal battle, by the way. I mean, you know, the irony of this is it is not a, here's what's scary, what's
piece of legislation that's passed one year by the legislature, signed by the governor, and it goes bad during that year, and the legislators go, ruh-roh. We need to fix that next legislative session. You virtually can't unring the bell when it's a constitutional amendment, because you have to go back, have it put back on the ballot, and then vote it again. Now, I think the legislature can put an issue on the ballot without having to go through a individual's signing petitions again, should they choose to do that. But still, it would have to be taken off by 60%. How many constitutional amendments have been removed from Florida's Constitution? None that I'm aware of. Time's just about up. You know, I'm Southern Baptist. When it's time to go, it's time to go. Thank you, Elder Scott, for his blessings on each and every one of you. Thank you for allowing me to be with you tonight. Please vote your conscience, but it's very important that regardless of your position,